Testy, testy, 1, 2, 1, 2. This thing on, Nicholas? This thing
No,
on?
I can't hear anything you're saying, Joe.
Let me tell you something. I don't know half of you as well as I should like, and I like less than you half as well as you deserve.
I agree with that. Yes, well said, Mr. Baggins.
Do you want to hear a funny story?
I always do.
Do you want to hear a story about how I made some kid cry this morning while I was dropping Violet off at school? And that kid was not my own kid.
I mean, I want to hear it. Whether or not you want to share it, I mean, that's your call.
So, Violet lost a tooth last night, right?
Okay.
And so we're standing at line, waiting for the bell to ring and for her to go inside. And she had smiled. It caught my eye. I go, oh, kid, let me see. I haven't really, seen your new smile, with the missing tooth. And so she smiles, got, a big old gap in there. And one of her friend, Nate, I was talking with, with his mom earlier, and she was, oh, Violet, you lost another tooth? She says, yeah. And then she looks at me and she says, yeah, so-and-so, he's waiting for this tooth to come out. The new tooth is grown in behind it, but he just won't yank the new one or the old one out.
Ew.
And so I'm talking to her, right? And I'm not paying attention. I don't even realize if anyone else is listening to me, right? And I said, oh, well, what I can do is I could take a string, I could tie it around his tooth, I'll tie it to a golf ball, and I'll drive that golf ball into the woods. Right. And I'm just talking to her and she laughs and then her face changes. And then I look behind me and he's like shaking. And I thought he was like being funny and he wasn't being funny. So I absolutely horrified. And I felt absolutely fucking awful, Nicholas.
Wow.
All goddamn day. Like legit, not joking. I literally felt terrible. So I went to Newbury Comics today. And so there's these blockies, which they make like Transformers, right? And so they've got like the regular size ones, they have jumbo ones, but they have these new like smaller ones, and there's a whole bunch of blind boxes, so you can get like little mini Transformers, or you can get their vehicles. So when I went to pick Violet up today, when I was waiting for him to come out, and of course the kid fucking forgot at the moment he walked through those doors. I didn't. And so when he came out, I gave it to him and I apologized. He goes, for what?
That's good. At least
his mom's laughing his ass off, but I felt so fucking bad.
It's really important for us all to clock that. Like those of us who beat ourselves up all the time. Not only do kids have a tendency to forget silly things, but there are some adults who have a tendency to just squirrel. They totally forget. Everything we think is a big deal is not always as big of a deal. But I can't say that I blame you for feeling bad about that. I mean, I think you're a monster. But I already knew this. So
I was absolutely gutted.
So when are you going to tell me the funny story?
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of all ages, TLDR Studios proudly presents to you the greatest, and I mean the greatest podcasting team in the world. I am Tenacious Doc, and he is your friendly neighborhood comic book writer, Nick Friar, and together we are the TLDR Comic Book Club, baby. And that's the way it is.
Oh, I thought you were saying that's why the cookie crumbles.
Oh, well, yeah, I thought about it. I was trying to channel my inner Walter Cronkite there, but
probably better.
Little part zany, part serious, Nicholas, because we're nothing if we're not fucking serious.
This is very true. I respect that. Good call by you, bad call by me. Anyways, I am doing great. Quick reminder for everybody, we don't have any Fireside chats planned for you this week. We're doing another mainline episode, but you never know when those are going to come, because you know what? We never know when they're going to come. So make sure you subscribe to one of our audio channels. That's the only place you're going to that's the only place. Sometimes I hope you know that you tell on yourself when you say these things. So make sure you subscribe to one of our audio channels. Otherwise, you're going to learn no, now I'm all fucked up. You messed me up in the middle of my spiel. I have this like on like I don't have it written down. This is like so robo brain. I cannot be interrupted. I'm done. That's it. Show's over, everybody. But seriously, Fireside chats only available on our audio channels. Subscribe to one of those. That way you can get those conversations delivered right to your listening device. And those are conversations with creators across the industry. That's about it, Joe. We're good. Okay, covered all that. Anyways, moving on. We got nothing for catching up this week. As I said, we got mainline issue 111. We're doing a pair of indie titles that we'll get to in a bit. But let's talk about what's coming out this week and start with Marvel.
Back-to-back mainline issues, Nicholas. I don't know if you touched
Love it.
upon this, but like I don't know. I mean, we're getting back to our roots. You know, they say don't ever
Right.
forget where you came from, and
Mhm.
so we're gonna be flying through mainline issues before you know it. But
Mhm.
I say that and watch that not be the case. Watch our next mainline issue be 2026.
Has a tendency to happen that way.
I'm gonna
Yes.
have a question for you. You ready? What's first? Our next mainline issue or Tatum returning from his Achilles injury?
Well, you know it. He got surgery, right?
Yeah, it sucks.
Yep.
That
Yes.
sucks. That was
That
that was
was
the joke,
okay.
right? It's a year,
Okay. Okay.
right?
Yep. Sorry.
Right.
You're right.
You got
Sorry.
the
Yes. Yes.
ah,
That did go over my head. Yes. 100%. I was like, wait, took it way too literally. That was brutal. I've heard that. I've never experienced it, but I've heard from people who have, like, that's the worst thing, the worst pain that you
oh
can
yeah,
feel from like
yeah,
an athletic injury.
yeah. I know. I'd only wish that on some people. Uh,
I hope Goo's not listening.
oh, yeah. He's suffered enough. Second rate. Podcast. But that's either here or there. Uh, I mean, it's hard once you're in this upper echelon. It's you don't want to fly too close to the sun on the wings of pastrami, though. I'll tell you that much. You got to
We've
keep
already
grinding, Nicholas.
we've already done that many a time. Yep.
Anyways, back on track, baby. So from Marvel Comics for a new comic book day, I believe, Nicholas, May 14th is when these books will drop. We have Ultimate X-Men issue 15, Uncanny X-Men issue 14, Ultimate Black Panther issue 16, One World Under Doom issue 4, Miles Morales Spider-Man issue 33, Wolverine issue 9, Daredevil issue 21, The Immortal Thor issue 23, Like a Phoenix Rising from Arizona. We have Phoenix issue 11, The Spectacular Spider-Man issue 15. That one was actually said correctly, Nicholas. X Factor issue 10. Helverine issue 6. Did you read Helverine?
Oh yeah. Yes, I am all caught up on Wolverine.
Oh,
Yeah.
I I'm gonna try to say too much. Hell Hulk and their search for him, fantastic,
Yeah.
just
It is.
fantastic.
Yeah. I love I really liked obviously we talked about the first arc a ton. Really enjoyed the first arc. The Mephisto kind of transitional arc. I mean,
Mm,
issue was very well done. But now going into six and seeing what the big thing that's coming, it feels like it's going to be very chaotic. And I think Benjamin Percy has really hit his stride with this character.
yeah, a lot of fun there. Red Hulk. Speaking of Benjamin Percy, issue 4. Funny little connection
Mm.
there. Doctor Strange of Asgard, issue 3. Thunderbolts, Doomstrike, issue 4. Star Wars Jedi Knights, issue 3. Godzilla vs. X-Men, issue 1. Gwenpool, issue 1. And then a number 1, Nicholas, that I had a chance to read. Did you have a chance to read it yet?
Yes, I did.
All right. And that book, of course, being Spider-Verse versus Venomverse, issue 1. This is written by Kyle Higgins and Matt Groom with art by Luciano Vecchio. Nicholas, what did you think?
Yeah, I'm not on the up and up when it comes to Spider Verse and Venom Verse. I mean, I did read I think it was the death of the Venom Verse when Carnage was attacking them and whatnot. But I think that Matt and Kyle did a really good job of making sure that as long as you have an general understanding of what those two concepts are, you're in like maybe have a little bit of knowledge. I mean, even then, I don't feel like you had to have any knowledge going into this. They did a really good job of setting the stage, but at the same time, like the story continues to move on. It's not we're getting caught up in like this happened and that happened and all this whatever. It's just a few little passing things, and this is a whole new story as much as all that kind of stuff is related. And I also appreciate how we get a lot of new Venom characters, a lot of new Spider-Man characters, some that we know, some that we don't know. There's one in particular who I'm very much invested in. I think, speaking of chaos, like I think this character is going to create a lot of problems for everybody involved in this story.
Yeah, I would say it's completely new to me. Like all of it. I don't read the Spider-Verse stuff or Venomverse stuff, and I loved it. One of the things that I loved was the first several pages where you had that duality, right?
Hmm.
And it was so well done. I thought with the lettering where you had the dialogue boxes, and it was like half white, half black, and they're saying the same. It's just I don't know, like in my mind, I processed that really well, and that really worked because it's almost like I could hear both their voices in my head at the same time as I was reading that. So I love that. The art was absolutely tremendous. The action sequences that we got, towards the end of the issue, was excellent. So I can't wait to see where this story goes.
Yeah, it was a really nice touch. I'm glad you called that out. I don't think I have the letterer in front of me right now. It's not easily accessible online, but yeah, there was really a job well done on that front. All right, moving over to DC, we got Action Comics 1086, Batman and Robin issue 21, Batman Dark Patterns issue 6, Aquaman issue 5, Green Lantern Corps issue 4, DC versus Vampires World War V issue 9, Batman 89 Echoes issue 6, Fire and Ice When Hell Freezes Over issue 2, Wayne Family Adventures issue 164, and then Supergirl issue 1. I did want to touch on this before the book that we break down. This felt like this had more of a YA kind of vibe to it. Even then, it kind of felt like, where some of this other stuff has like an older feel to it, and then there's YA. It kind of felt even more in like a ground in between that. I don't know if there is like a designated area, but it did feel like that. But I do think that in terms of a plot, it took some interesting turns that I did not expect. I felt like the tone that was set early on, where it was a little bit younger, and then the plot that we got, I feel like the plot that we got was a little more interesting than the tone. But again, like that's for a younger reader than it is than you and I necessarily. So just something to keep in mind for those who are thinking about picking that one up. But then we got Absolute Batman issue 8 that we both wanted to discuss. There's one panel, Joe, in Freeze's lab that is complete nightmare fuel. It is. Oh, it was outstanding. Marcos Martin, that was his best. I think of all the stuff that we got of Victor Freeze in all of this, through these two issues, that was the absolute number one best panel and best moment from the whole mini arc.
So not only that, Nicholas, but I hope we get a chance to talk to Scott at some point because there's something I want to say to him. Because this is after reading this issue, his take. Now the artist is who's the
Marcos
artist
Martin.
there? Yeah, Marcos Martin. Thank you. The way that the concept for Mister Freeze, I think, terrifies me on a level more than the Batman Who Laughs. And the Batman
Ooh,
Who Laughs terrifies the absolute shit out of me, and I've told Scott that, on a number of occasions. But there's something about the Absolute verse Mr. Freeze out of all the character designs and all that, I think he's both my favorite and the one that absolutely terrifies the hell out of me. I said this last issue when we got that first introduction. I absolutely love this iteration of Mr. Freeze because it is so different than sort of the comic version that we get to him. I don't mean that in the literal sense, but like, Mr. Freeze,
mhm.
just like there's almost a ridiculousness to his overall aesthetic and that we're used to seeing. This was terrifying,
Yes.
absolutely terrifying, and this issue was absolutely like you could feel it. It was a very palpable suspense. So I absolutely loved it. Oh, we lost Sir Nicholas. So I don't know if I froze or he froze, but we're gonna keep rolling here.
Okay.
So
Wait, are we good now? Can you hear me now? I don't know what the hell happened there.
yeah, you froze. I very poorly tried to
No,
fill
you're
the
good.
fill the airtime.
You're good. You're good. I do have a little bit more I wanted to say on Freeze, and I'll take care of this in the audio form. Um,
You damn right you will.
But when like describing Freeze as terrifying is perfect to me. Like I these characters that are like slow moving and elongated. Like if we've seen it
Mm.
with like seen it in Department of Truth, James Tynion the fourth over with the was it the Men in Black, I believe. Like those characters, they just scare the fucking shit out of me. And Victor Freeze in the Absolute Universe feels very similar. This is a mini series, a mini arc, I should say. So I hope that doesn't mean this is all we're ever going to get of Freeze in the Absolute Universe. It's an ongoing title, so there's plenty of room to explore this character more. But man, like he was awesome. I really hope we get to see him again, and he gives such a different feel than what we saw from Black Mask before, the bit that we've seen of the Joker, and then obviously the bits that we've seen in of that Scott has shared on social media of Bane, who is going to be the next big bad that comes into the mix. But also like we all know Bane's coming, but like there's other stuff that happens in this
Oh.
issue that really sets up well for the next arc. Like there's constantly moving pieces in this,
Mhm.
as you would expect from a Scott Snyder story.
Yep, yep. So absolutely brilliant stuff. Okay, so now we will get to Image and Skybound. I believe we're getting Transformers issue 20. Wasn't in our review bin, but sometimes Image does that. They don't send out a review copy for a particular book, maybe for spoiler reasons. So be on the lookout for Transformers 20. But if it's not out, that just means it will be coming out soon. We have Spawn issue 354, Geiger issue 14, World Tree issue 14. This was a great world building issue. We get a little bit more origin story. That's what this arc has mostly been. It's mostly been an origin story of the Naked Girl, but we get a lot more teeth into that universe, which was excellent. King Spawn issue 45, Ice Cream Man issue 44, Ultra Mega issue 9, Witchblade issue 11, Savage Dragon issue 277, Black Ritual, The School of Nyx, not Stevie Nicks, just Nyx, issue 2, Dead Eyes, The Empty Frames issue 4, Golden Rage, A Mother Knows Best. Ain't that the goddamn truth, issue 2. Invincible Universe, Battle Beast, issue 1. I didn't get a chance to read this. I am looking forward to it. A lot of hype with this issue, Nicholas.
Yes, sir.
The Cold Witch, A Tale of the Shrouded College, issue 1. And then we got an Energon Universe 2025 special. And then we've got 3. That's right, folks. Count them. 3 books from Image Comics that we would like to discuss. Nicholas, kick us off, baby.
Yeah, I mean, I have to go with the book that you and I are both immensely high on. We were high on this book before we got to read the first issue, but then we read it, and it is. I'm not going to take your words out of your mouth what you said about it, but what I've been feeling about Exquisite Corpses, this has the makings of being Tynion's best book ever, his biggest hit ever. This is only the first issue. But man, it was so good. The world building was top notch. The establishment of the characters that we get, and there's so many characters that we get in this first issue too. But there's something there for everybody. There's so many moving parts and so many, like people who you're excited to see go to work. Some people who you already hate. Some people who you're already worried about. Just everything in this oversized issue. And I love that James Tynion and Michael Walsh did an oversized issue. Michael Walsh did an outstanding job with the killers that we have in this story. So many awesome designs. I love all of them. And I do have a question for you. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, Joe. Do you know, have you decided what your favorite state's killer is yet to this point?
Oh,
For me,
I,
I'm in just to help you out. I do like Massachusetts a lot, but I gotta say New York is my favorite one.
So I have to go back and look at them again because I can't remember. Um, I'll tell you which one creeped me out the most. I whatever state was the nurse,
Oh yeah, shoot.
right? Right. There was poison. Was the premise of the story, right, is that there's 13 families who control everything, and every so often they play a game. It's sort of and then there were none style, and the last one standing gets to hold on to the ultimate power until the next games. And so they pick a killer and then they pick a weapon. And what I loved about this issue in particular was when you got introduced to it's like, during the NFL draft when a team will send out a special person to announce the pick for the draft, right? The family will send their person out to announce who the killer is and what their weapon is.
Mhm.
And I thought that was so well done, right? Because you'd have the person introducing who their killer, and you got this awesome, just the art style of it. It was just like this, sort of glamour action shot. And the colors were unreal, right? The character designs were all unique, and I absolutely love that. And what I really love too is that you got like 2 or 3 panels of like a little bit of that killer's sort of background, why they're so good with poison, or they're so good with whatever their weapon is. But whatever state was the nurse, that one actually creeped me the hell out. I go, oh,
That was
that's a
Virginia.
terrifying design.
That was
Yes.
Virginia,
Okay.
and I also will say, like, scrolling back through the issue again, like, Maryland, I like their killer a lot without getting into specifics, and I like Rhode Island's killer a lot, which is actually, I will say, is the first one that we ended up meeting. And honestly, one of the thing that's so beautiful about this book too is, again, it's oversized issue, so that helps. But you and I could talk so much about this first issue and get into spoilers, and you still, like, there's still so much that, like, we'll miss things or whatever. It would take a while to really dig in fully to this first issue. So
We could do an entire episode just on this issue alone.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, we really could. We absolutely could. This is we've t- you and I have talked about how, like, there are some standout books for us this year when it comes to the floppies already. Like, there's some, ongoing. Obviously, those are books that carry into this year from last year and beyond. But there's, like, best limited series, best new title, all this stuff. There are some things that had really good positioning, and then we get exquisite corpses, and it's like, fuck, man.
Market right now, Nicholas. Timestamp the shit out of this. As of right now, this is the best single issue of any book I have read this year, hands down.
You know what? You're not wrong. I cannot say anything against that. And there have been some awesome fucking books, man. But this is James Tynion at the height of his power, man. No question. And you got Michael Walsh, who was the did all of Silver Coin, and then was it the Frankenstein story Frankenstein that he did?
Mm-hmm.
And that whole concept was brilliant. So you have
Mm-hmm.
those two, and then I think there are going to be other creators that get involved in some capacity with, like, other.
Bornchak, Bashotti, I
Yeah,
think at some point, right?
yeah. So it's just, I mean, whew.
Now, this is just a guess on my part, right? Because I went ahead and looked ahead. Like, do you think that, like, each issue, because I think there's going to be 12 or more, right? Do you think each issue will focus on a particular killer and have a different creator? Like, not saying just that killer alone, but have that killer be the predominant character in that particular issue and have a different creator or artist
Mhm.
behind that character. That's kind of where my head went to when I saw that, but I could be completely wrong.
That could be it. That could end up happening. I know this. We're not getting. I heard this in a Time interview. We're not getting any flashbacks in this story, so we're not gonna, like, all these characters who we've seen. We're not gonna go and see, like,
Perfect.
like, it's everything is about the here and now and all the machinations of what's going on.
Perfect.
So,
Those 2 to 3 panels that we got is all you need. Is all you
mhm,
need, right? When
yes,
they're introducing these characters. So that's sort of my guess, is that, like, each issue will, like, it'll obviously be telling the story, moving it forward, but I think there'll be, like, one character that is, like, the focus, right? And then maybe that's where you get the other creators either writing them or drawing them. I don't know, but that was my guess.
yeah. I also can't help but think too, Joe. Like, we're gonna lose some of these, killers, like,
Oh,
quickly.
we're
We have
gonna
to.
we're gonna lose them all but one. I mean, that's
Yep.
sort of where this is going, right? So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, baby.
So I'm curious too, for our listeners, if you guys, when you guys read this, if you have a single, contestant or multiple contestants that you like, let us know, because I'm genuinely curious whose people's favorites are in this. Like, uh, one gets more fleshed out way more than everybody else and is a very compelling character, but even the other 11 are like, man, like, I like a few of these, and even the ones that I didn't like as much, like, I didn't think they weren't cool. They just weren't, like, the one for me that I want to necessarily back.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah,
lot going
yeah.
on here, and then there's also the citizens and all this too. Like, I tell you what, I like the
The
sheriff.
convenience store. Oh, see, I like the convenience store
the,
guy.
the convenience store. He was awesome. It was great. Oh
Yeah,
my god,
yeah.
it's
All fucking Laura, fucking
uh,
Laura. That's all I'm gonna
uh,
say about that. God damn it.
unreal. All right, where do you want to
Yeah.
go next?
Okay, so next we have. I talked about this book on a main line not too long ago. It's Phantom Road issue 12. So we're continuing with the newest arc, and what I love about issue 11 and issue 12 is that we're really sort of diving back, you know to a real origin story of what the how did we sort of really come across these parallel universes, what's going on with the truck stops, why are they crossover points. We learn more about that. We learn more about those uh creepy ass clay people that I talked about that were so predominantly featured in the first two arcs of the story. So we get a lot of information that's filling in a lot of the gaps. And I'm assuming, I don't think I'm going out on a limb here, that when this arc ends, it's going to bring us back to the present, the present story. But I love it. It's really great. And I'm glad that we're getting it now versus not sort of like jammed in through the first two arcs. I think that would have screwed with the pacing a little bit. So dedicating an arc to it well after everything is well established, I think is excellent. And Lemire and Gabrielle Walter absolutely crushing it. So Phantom Road,
Nice.
issue 12. Read it, baby.
Yeah, I got to get on this. By the way, I just noticed that you were wearing your Thundercats shirt. I
Oh.
love that. Nice touch. Very nice touch. All right. The last image book, if we haven't talked enough, this is the first time I think that we've done 3 image books in a while. I could be wrong. We did like a lot of Mad Cave like one week where we did like
Image
3.
has been not as voluminous lately, right? Or not. This is one of those weeks where they just like they put out a ton of books, and we happen to be reading all of them.
Yeah, it's definitely not as much as we normally. We usually have like from like week to week on average, we usually have 3 books at least between the two of us that
Mhm.
we're reading at Image. And yeah, this year maybe it hasn't felt like to that level necessarily. They're putting out a ton of stuff still, but just not as much as what we're reading. But without further ado, the last one that we want to talk about from Image, I Was a Fashion School Serial Killer, issue 2, Doug Wagner and Daniel Hilliard. You guys heard us rave about the first issue of this. It was so good. I absolutely loved it. I could not wait for the second issue of this thing. And again, so good. Like this is we talked about Exquisite Corpses, how it's like really jumped to the front of the line when it comes to floppy awards, but I Was a Fashion School Serial Killer is still right there in my book after reading the second issue. And I also feel more solidified in my comparison that I made in that first issue where I talked about how it was Dexter meets Devil Wears Prada, specifically on the Dexter side of things. And I want to clarify this because you from the Netflix show just wrapped
Oh.
up season of that. And okay, you don't like the series. I love the series. And like the comparison of Dexter versus like Joe Goldberg, there are some similarities, like of course with those two characters, but from a personality standpoint too, in a lot of ways, like the way they move through the world, they are very different. Like Joe Goldberg is like he knows how to evolve to every situation that he's in and knows how to survive. Whereas Dexter, he's very like yes, he does survive and like manage his way through situations, but you know how uncomfortable he is at all times. And there are some times where he does not handle himself well. And Rennie is 100% much more Dexter than Joe Goldberg. And also in the way that she like the people that she targets, she's more like that than she is a Joe Goldberg as well. And in the first issue, we understood like how it was very clear how like out of her mind she was, and we got a good glimpse at how vicious she can be. I feel like most of her actions were more like this person is not well in that first issue. That's how I felt. In this second issue, it was more viciousness. Like there's a lot more the action that we get to see a little bit more of that. And it was freaking this girl is crazy, man, and I love her. Rennie is awesome.
Yeah, again, put a star next to this series as well. Best limited series, best new series. I think we have to come up with a horror series. We read enough damn horror books.
You're right.
Um, it's just it is so good, right? And I love Hilliard's art style, because there's a whimsy to it,
Mm.
but it's so friggin' violent.
Hmm.
And there's great comedy because there's a scene where she's just like, oh, let me go grab something out. There's a panel which like, let me go essentially go grab something out of my room, and like the skinned corpse is just kind of hanging out of the closet, and just kind of kicks it back in with her foot and closes the door like you would like a piece of dirty laundry or something. You don't like,
Mm.
a pair of skivvies you don't want people to see. You just kind of kick back in and close the door. Like that killed me. This book is fun, but it's also wildly vicious, and I absolutely love it.
We definitely need to make a horror category. I don't think we need to do new horror and ongoing horror. I think we just do one horror, we pick it, and we just go with that. That's going to be a tough one though, but it
Yeah,
definitely opens things up a little bit because, I mean, we do like we're in the golden age of horror comics, and you and I just cannot get enough of them. All right, I'm going to take us through a couple here, Joe. From Dark Horse, we got Usagi Yojimbo, 10,000 Plums, issue 3.
feel it in my plums.
Sister Imperator issue 3, Behemoth issue 4, Huck Big Bad World issue 1. That is a Mark Miller joint. From Oni, we got Mine is a Lonesome Grave issue 4, Dark Regards issue 1. And I'm blanking on the artist's name of this series, but that's the artist from I Hate This Place. These guys
Toplin,
top.
Artem Toplin,
It's like a heavy metal, or I think it's actually, is it black metal? Not death
black metal.
metal. Yeah, it's a black metal like story. You didn't check it out, did you?
I did.
It's outrageous. That thing, it was fucking ridiculous. The entire issue. Then we got Adventure Time Deluxe Edition issue 1. From IDW, we got TMNT Mutant Nation issue 6, Star Trek Lower Decks issue 7, Godzilla Here There Be Aliens issue 1, and then from Vault, we supposedly have a Lilith issue 4. This is a book that I have dibs on, so I unfortunately, like, it's just not. I don't know what's been going on. Again, we've talked about it. Vault's got different things going on, but I will definitely, like, I loved that first issue, and we'll definitely be checking it out more. And then we got Money Shot Big Bang issue 1. And then from Mad Cave, Dick Tracy issue 10, Pastime issue 2, Gotcha Man Only One Earth issue 4, and then Joe, a title that I'm a little bit behind on, but I know you want to talk some Flash Gordon.
Yeah, Flash Gordon, written by Jeremy Adams, with art by Will Conrad. Again, it's just popped into my head. Like, I do my hidden gem of the week. Do we need like well, I guess it's the Hawkeye Award, right? The most surprising book of the
Surprisingly
year. Like,
underrated, yeah.
right, this would be one of them because we talk about this all the time. Like, Flash Gordon was past our time, right? But this series is fun as hell. I absolutely love it. It's that pulpy throwback sci-fi series. I love the characters. I love where the story's going. We get a great twist in this issue that you just like. It's a popcorn kind of book. Like, I want to, like, I wish this was like a series so I could watch it, right? Because this would be like a show I would binge, a cartoon I would binge, right? So like, it's just, I have a ton of fun reading this book, and it has me wanting to, like I know our good pal Gary Maloney does a lot of like Flash Gordon, like he translates it into like Gaelic
Oh
and
yeah.
stuff like that. I wouldn't be half mind to go back and check out some old Flash Gordon books and kind of see what they're like. So this book's a great introduction to anyone who's new to the character. The storytelling's great, the action's great, the art's great. It's a fun as hell book to read.
Yeah, I am like that in Dick Tracy, which is another book that I'm going to talk about on the show. Honestly, I wouldn't be stunned if I do Dick Tracy for the next main line. But those are like two. Again, we're like seeing a lot of throwback characters. Obviously these two are a little bit older, quite a bit older in Dick Tracy's case than Captain Planet. But there's a lot of stuff that's getting brought back in comics, and I love that. It's just that there's a different freedom that comes with comics versus live action, and even versus like animation and just shows in general, because as much as I think animation and comics are the perfect like transition, whichever order you want to go in, still, like, shows are going to have a little more restrictiveness to it than comics are going to necessarily. So yeah, these are two series that have been a lot of fun for both of us. I gotta get back on track with both of them. I have my vacation coming up, and I'm definitely going to make both of these books a priority. All right, then to wrap things up, we got Boom, I Heart Skull Crusher, issue 9, and When I Lay My Vengeance Upon Thee, issue 4. Now, we did not get the review copies for either of these. Stuff like that happens. So if they're not at your local comic shop, then we just didn't. We somehow, I don't know, something happened. There's been obviously it's no secret to anybody. There's just been a lot of issues when it comes to books getting to local comic shops.
Looking at you, Diamond. Looking at you.
Yeah. So what they're going through a odd transition period with the purchase and bankruptcy and all this different stuff. So hopefully things get sorted out with everybody else at some point. But yeah, anyways, moving on from that, if we are finishing What's New section of a mainline episode with a title, or a company rather, I should say, then that means Joe's going to be talking about a book from that given publisher. So boom, we're going to wrap things up. Joe, what do you got for me this week?
So this is a book that I've sort of had earmarked for a while, and I don't know how I missed it initially. Now, it did come out before I got back into comics again in earnest. And being such a big James Tynion guy, I said, "Well, you got to read this fucking book, Joseph. You got to do it." So, the book that I am discussing today, Nicholas, I think is the book that probably helped put James Tynion on the map. This was a big breakout series. This is The Woods from Boom Studios, written by James Tynion IV, with art by Michael Dialinus. There we go. Colorist Jason Gonzalez, and letters by Ed Dukeshire. This team may sound familiar. This is the team that also did Wind, a book that I did talk about on this program way back.
Yeah.
So synopsis. On October 16th, 2013, 437 students, 52 teachers, and 24 additional staff from Bay Point Preparatory High School in suburban Milwaukee, Wisconsin, vanished without a trace. Countless light years away, far outside the bounds of the charted universe, 513 people find themselves in the middle of an ancient primordial wilderness. Where are they? Why are they there? The answers will prove stranger than anyone could possibly imagine. So, Nicholas, 36.
Milwaukee? I've never heard that in my life.
From Wayne's World. The scene with Alice Cooper.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Right? Whatever that, you pronounce it Milwaukee.
You got
Milwaukee for the simpletons like Nicholas.
Yeah, apparently. My bad. Wow. Totally.
Read a book. There. Read a book, Nicholas.
Oh, you got me. Fuck.
So, The Woods, man. So, like, if you've read Wind, right, and there's a very similar vibe to that, and that is in part to Michael Dialinus's art style. It's incredible art, and it's so perfect for sort of like a fantasy series, and that's sort of what The Woods is. It's a sci-fi fantasy story with great horror elements. Much like Wind is, I think, more on the fantastical side of things. Like, it's more based in fantasy, fairies and different kingdoms, and it's definitely got more of that. I say young adult, right? But like, I don't want to like pigeonhole Wind, but that's like, it's more in that vein. Whereas The Woods, I think, is like the next level up, right? It's a little bit more mature is not the right word, but like, it's just like, it's definitely geared for a little bit older, right?
Sure.
Audience. But both have like really great horror elements. One of the ways that sort of, one of the things that, came into my head when trying to think about how to describe this book is, it's like, it's got a Lord of the Flies and a Lord of the Rings vibe to it.
Ooh.
Where you've got, the school that is the synopsis mentioned, what, 437 students, right? So when you have that many kids and they outnumber, the adults, right, almost 10 to 1, shit's gonna get chaotic, right? And you're gonna have this weird power struggle dynamic, and so we get a big part of that, and that's sort of the Lord of the Flies, part of it. Whereas you have a group of students who detach themselves, and try to figure out what the hell's going on, and that's got more of a fellowship, right, type feel to it, right? And so you've got like within this story, you've got a couple of different things going on, and the story that James tells is really really awesome, right? This is a series, a book that I think everyone should read. And so it's got like it's got that great high school drama to it, right? Where, you've got different factions of kids. You've got the theater nerds, you've got the student body nerds, you've got the jocks, you've got the loners, right? You get all these elements. You got a lot of different types of characters in this book. And like the main characters, like each one of them falls into sort of one of those categories, and then sort of being forced to work together and figure out what the hell is going on, like just creates some really great storytelling. And so essentially, what the story is that you're sort of dropped into this high school, and you've got this sort of regular sort of high school drama going on, and you're getting introduced to these characters sort of one by one, and then you get introduced to, I wouldn't call him the main character, but he kind of is. They're all sort of main because they're all very important in their own way. But this real prick, Adrian, and he's a loner, and there's like you get this odd vibe about him right away, and then like the event happens. It's like a Thanos snap, and all of a sudden these monsters start attacking the school. Actually, pick off a couple of kids right off the bat. And this Adrian, this cat, kind of has this sense of like he knows what's going on without really knowing what's going on. There's something weird, about him, and he's trying to gather some students to go to follow him. He knows how to, he knows what's going on. He gets a group of students to follow him out into the woods because something is calling to him, and they come across this sort of weird alien sort of like glowing stone with this weird writing on it, and then something happens to Adrian and all hell breaks loose. And then you got these group of kids now that are diving deeper and deeper in the woods. He's like, you got to follow me, you got to trust me, I know I'm the only one who knows how to get us home. And then they come in contact with other monsters, and then they come into contact with other humans, but not from their time. It's not like an entire town just went poof and vanished. No, you get some Viking looking dudes and some real, Civil War, looking, and so like, when you meet them, they're like, that dude's got glowing eyes. We got to fucking kill him. And that's Adrian. There's something weird, like his eyes are glowing, and as the story evolves, you really learn about this world. Some of these characters have been there for hundreds of years, and so they're trying to survive. They're trying to survive. These monsters that are attacking them. They're trying to survive these humans that have been attacking them. All the while, you've got a majority of the other students still at the school trying to figure out what the hell's going on. You've got a gym teacher who's trying to, usurp control from the leader of the student body president, and that gets really weird, and sort of, chaotic. And so what you have is this really really nuanced sci-fi story, that's also a fantasy story, because there's times where you sort of feel like you've been thrown back into sort of like this medieval time period. And as the story unfolds and what you learn about this mysterious power, what is going on with this main character, Adrian, and he really does go on to become the story's antagonist. It's just a really rich world, and the art is really vibrant, and gets really vicious. And so um I got halfway through the series so far, right? I've read the first 3 volumes, and it's wild, and it hasn't even gotten to where I think it's going to get in terms of like just how intense, the story is going to get. Um, and characters that you initially hated, you go on to love. Characters that you initially loved, you're like, what the right? So like that's what Tynan does really well. He taps into these, these different, these different sort of oddball, character groups, and really makes them relatable, and tells this really incredible story. And like I said, if you've read Wind, it's very similar, but like it's ratcheted up a notch, so like, the characters, you get Adrian, he's a loner, he's a real selfish prick, and he's your central antagonist, and he's a character that you really just kind of hate from the get-go. Um, but there's another character in this, Isaac, who's his only friend, who is, madly in love with him, and Adrian doesn't, reciprocate. But he's like he's still friends with him, but he's also a real prick to him at the same time. And so like you've got that dynamic there. You've got maybe my favorite character, Karen, and she's the only one that's really sort of like she's a central friend that's like friend with a couple of the other people, even though they're not friends. And she is also like she's one of these doesn't have a lot of confidence, but she's a real badass at the same time. Like her main weapon is she carries around a field hockey stick, and she's not afraid
Ooh,
to crack some skulls.
ooh.
And so she's a bit of a glue character. She's kind of what brings a lot of these sort of you know you know uh, different groups together and kind of get them to sort of fight, and sort of act as a team. You have Sanami, who is headstrong. She's got great survival skills. She's friends with Karen. And then you have Maria, who is also extraordinarily headstrong. She's the head of the student body. She's the student body president, and she ain't gonna let some fucking principal tell her what to do. She thinks she actually
Hmm,
wields real authority and power. And so she's the one that gets the school to band together against that oncoming onslaught, not from the monsters, not from necessarily the other humans that are out there, but mostly from the gym teacher, who is like got some perverted sense of power as well, and trying to like take shit over. So that was a really cool dynamic. You've got Calder, who is another one of my favorite characters. He's what you would call the rebel, a bit of a troublemaker, but he's really really smart. And he's smarter than he lets on. He's one of those characters that like pretends to be dumb, so people like eh, you know don't
oh,
want expect too much from him. But he's the way that he is because he's got a fucked up family, and that that really starts to unfold, especially in the third arc that I just finished up. And then you have Ben, who's a big fella. He's really kind. He's really compassionate. He's loyal. His relationship with Isaac and the gang, it's what really transpires is really unique as well. So like you just got like all these different characters that have all these different backgrounds that are coming together to fight against this really venomous, mysterious, power entity that has sort of taken over whatever world that they're on. And it is Adrian who learns how to wield it, and he becomes unstoppable. So they got to find a way to take out someone who is a colleague of theirs, right? And then you get introduced to the world in general. So it feels like it's like the land before time, right? It's like a medieval village, right? Where that they get sort of thrown into there. So it's like it's just really cool. It reminds me of like an old school Star Trek: The Next Generation,
hmm,
episode where they sort of land on a planet where they're like like their technology is that of like the 18th or 19th century,
hmm.
real sort of basic. And so like I love that aspect of it. So, like Tynan, just like I said, he does a really great job at always creating dynamic and relatable characters. And he really explores, the struggle of teenage life, of that of characters who are straight or LGBTQ, right? He is passionate about that, and he really, he dives into and explores that, with his characters. And then Michael Dialynis's art is just it's very animated, right? And is there's and I don't know what other way to put it. It's cartoony, but that's not to mean like it's like Sunday morning, funny papers cartoony. There's just there's a uniqueness to it that I absolutely love, and it fits like this fantasy story, this fantasy vibe perfectly.
Mhm.
If you've read Wind or if you've seen some of the artwork, for the covers, you'll know what I'm talking about. And then you combine that with Jason Gonzalez's colors, and the art just pops right off the page. So The Woods, it's a great sci-fi horror fantasy story, where your main characters are you know, and that's a weird fucking age, right? Like junior, senior year of high school, you think you know everything. You think you have all the goddamn answers, and you don't know jack shit.
Yeah.
And it's a long time you go in life before you realize that you really don't actually know everything. And he explores that really well, and that tells a really good story. It's a really fast paced story. And so if you're a fantasy fan, it's a great must read.
I can't wait to check this one out. It's in as you know, you've already hit on it about how Tynan is so good at just creating characters. It really is remarkable though. Like you listed off like 7 or 8 characters. I don't think you got quite to 10, but like a ton of characters that you rattled off here and talked about. And I was like instantly, okay, I got like two that I really like, and I'm sure. And like I know one of them was Calder, who you also said you like, but it's just you have a few different characters that people can latch onto, and
Yeah.
it really is remarkable how good he is at creating new characters, because we have like Erica Slaughter, who's like the his to this point his peak, but you have, even in the Slaughterverse, you have so many other interesting characters who we've wanted to learn more about, who we have learned more about. And then we're talking about Exquisite Corpses, and it's like there's a fuck ton there, and then The Woods, and then Wind you've talked about. So, and then, like there's like World Tree has so much, and then Deviant was that you didn't have as many moving pieces, as many characters, but still you had quite a few interesting characters there. So it's just he really does an outstanding job. It really is remarkable. That's the thing that stands out most to me in
Yeah.
all the breakdown.
And the more you find out about this world and the entity that's controlling it and all that, it really it's just so good. It's a very engrossing story.
It really, and I can also, as you're talking about it, I hear the influences, for Wind, but also the influences for, in some capacity, Something is Killing the Children.
Mhm.
And I love to like that we're getting this obviously, again, is like this predates the show, but I feel like we've been talking so much about we're in this golden age of horror, but also fantasy comics. I don't think have ever been like ever at any point particularly massive, but we're starting to see them mixed in quite a bit. We've talked about them on the show, and I'm very much here for that. I would love to see, like, we're both big fantasy guys. You more so the reader, me more so like shows and movies and whatnot. And doesn't mean and I'm trying to do more with prose as well. I think I would love to see more and more of that in comics. So I'm hoping that we continue to get more. Then and with the Woods too. Like, didn't Tynan, he just had the whole final arc where he's in the middle of the. I think he just ended, like he went back and did like one last final arc with him, if I'm not mistaken. But
Mm.
yeah, so there's like it's just another series that I cannot wait to check out and dig into. And it's 36 issues, you said?
Correct, Mundo.
Yeah, that's a for your counter for the year. That's a nice little
Big
help
help.
one.
Big help.
And, and you fly through this, right? This isn't it doesn't, I wouldn't think it's like, okay, I read an issue, I got to take a second, you
No,
know.
no, no. I read 3 volumes over the weekend. I would have read more, but like pesky, work and parenting shit, gets in the way,
Sure,
you know.
sure. Okay, got it. Duly noted. So when I go to do it, this I'm gonna make sure that no, actually, there's nothing that's gonna get in my way. Anyways, moving on to the book that I'm gonna talk about. So we're both struggling to talk about like to label some of the like these books that I guess I said about Supergirl before, where it's not really YA, but like I wouldn't call that coming of age. But like that's kind of like a good middle ground when we talk about
Mm,
themes and genres and whatnot. And and like that sounds like what you're dealing with The Woods. You're absolutely dealing that with the book I'm talking about this week, Grommets, which was a book that you were going to talk about on the show. You were going to take dibs on it. I don't remember what happened, but I ended up reading it, the first issue, and I don't think you did. And then I was like, fuck it, I'm taking it. I think that was kind of what happened with
Bingo
that one.
bango. Yep.
This just ended, so I'm not making you wait any longer because, again, this was a book I know you wanted to read. This was 7 issues. The trade is hitting shelves on June 4th, so you guys are not going to have to wait that long, thankfully, for this. There is potential, absolutely potential, for there to be more to this story. I really hope there is. I wouldn't be surprised if that's going to be dependent on how the trade does, because I would think that more would have been announced. If and if the first and second issues did like gangbusters. So I highly encourage everybody to check it out because I would like more from this series. The writers on this, Rick Remender, of course, the name we know, and then Brian Posehn, who the name doesn't ring any bells, but if you go and Google this guy, he's one of those actors who you've seen, like who plays like a certain character in movies. I couldn't tell you exactly which ones he's been in, but
I think he was on that show, Master of Universe. He's been in like a bunch of, he's like an oddball comedy guy.
Exactly, an oddball comedy guy is a good way to put it. He's got he's appeared in The Big Bang Theory, Just Shoot Me. Oh, I remember him in Just Shoot Me. That's where I remember him more than anything. But he's been in a bunch. He's in 5-Year Engagement. Like when you see the guy, especially if you watch Just Shoot Me, because now I'm like he was a big time reoccurring character. You'll know exactly, like you'll hear his voice and everything like that the second you see him. The artist on this is Brett Parson, colors Moreno Dionisio, and letters by Russ Wooten, one of the more the better known letterers in all of comics. So I mentioned it's coming of age, but it's also a slice of life story, and that plays a lot into the tempo of how this series works, especially through like the first 3 issues, what I'll get into a little bit more. But this is very much focused on California skater kids in the 80s. Now, I'm not an 80s kid. Joe is, so this definitely would have played into his nostalgia a bit more. Were you ever a skater, Joe? I know like your kid's gotten into it a little bit here and there.
No, I mean I rollerbladed, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah, that's close I got.
So I remember I had some buddies who skateboard, but like Violet's trying to get into it, and but I remember like buying special wheels and grind plates and shit like that, and and thinking I was hot shit. But I could never like manipulate a skateboard. Rollerblading was just like that was second nature to me. But definitely there was a period in my life where that sort of skateboarding, rollerblading, that was like there was a Tony Hawk era for sure.
For sure. Okay, I hear that. I the closest I got to skateboarding, if you don't count rollerblading, which I'm not gonna go and pretend like I did it a ton. I definitely had rollerblades and mixed it in a little bit, but tech deck, those fingerboards, that was probably the closest I got to skateboarding. Other than like when I would visit my cousin because he had a skateboard. My old man, this probably doesn't surprise you to hear the show. My old man hated skateboarding. He was
you don't say.
Yeah, he was. Went in high school. He went to high school in the '80s, and he was an athlete. So he was like a certain character in this story. I don't think he was like these jocks, but he was a troublemaker. But anyways, I don't need to go and talk too much about that. But we'll get into the jocks in a bit.
You walk around with a cricket bat.
Yeah,
smoking nerds.
No, more like got away with like he's I mean I don't know, I think you know this, he's a big prankster, so he got away with a lot of like prank type things back in the day. But anyways, moving on. So speaking of like Tony Hawk and all that, this series, I don't have the quote in front of me, but this series actually did get some praise from Tony Hawk. I think that was featured on like the 2nd or 3rd issue. I don't think it was featured throughout the series, but either way, got some praise from him for how it captured that vibe. And also I saw in like the press releases surrounding the series announcement that this was perfect for fans of John Hughes' Brat Pack teen movies, Freaks and Geeks, and Dazed and Confused. So if you're looking for that vibe, if you're pining for that, those stories of yesteryear, those movies of yesteryear, this series is going to give that to you. Now, there's this big long synopsis for Grommets, and I do think it captures things well. But I think honestly, the first sentence of it, Joe, gets the job done. 2 outcast best friends navigate the Sacramento suburbs of 1984, where they find a home in skateboard culture and punk rock. Now, that's the synopsis for the first issue. I'm pretty sure the second issue right away is 1985. So we get to do, but it's like basically the school year, and it goes into the summer over the course of the story as well. And for those, I didn't know this term grommets necessarily. I didn't like, to me, I didn't care. Like, I saw the art, I saw Rick Remender, I was like, okay, well, what is this? And then get the series description. And I'm like, okay, awesome. But a grommet is, I guess, or was a commonly used term for a young and up and coming skater or surfer. So I guess it's been used. It's a term that's been used since the 60s. I wasn't. Were you familiar with that term? Because I sure as fuck wasn't.
A grommet, the only term in which I know grommet is like like a grommet hole that's like in a tarp or a piece of canvas that you would use to put like rope through or something to tie it down.
Okay, so there you go. I didn't know that word, that use of the word either. So that's all, everything I knew going into this series. Now the characters that we get, I loved this. This was such an interesting touch, and it worked really well for me in this series. The main characters are Rick and Brian, who are also the same names of the writers of this series. And I don't know how. I know, obviously these two creators know each other. I don't know how long they've known each other. I don't think that they grew up together. I can't, like, I haven't seen anything that indicated that necessarily, but I love that choice, because while stories don't necessarily need to do that, like in comics, just like with prose, like you're looking at writers who you like, you're familiar with their names and whatnot. In something like this, where this is very different for Rick Remender, he runs the gamut in terms of genre and whatnot, but at the same time, I don't know of any coming of age story from Rick Remender. So then I see his character named Rick. It's like, oh, maybe this is a little bit like, it's going to have some influences for him. And reading some of the introductory quotes from Rick and Brian, like ahead of the series, like, yeah, of course, like I'm not going to go and write this story. Like, you're not going to go and write this story. We were not these kids at all. These guys had these experiences where jocks were creating problems. Skateboarding was a big thing for them, being fish out of water, that kind of stuff. And Rick Remender in this story is the fish out of water at first, where he's a comic book reader and he is a skateboarder, and now he's living in San Francisco because his dad keeps moving him all across the freaking country. Dad's a real dickhead. Then we go, and he's like, he is Rick feels more like our POV, the audience character in this, where he's not crazy, ridiculous in any capacity. He goes through growth and changes and whatnot, but he's not like Brian, like, is a specific character. Like, he's the kid who's already in Sacramento. He befriends Rick. I don't think he had any friends. Like, yeah, there's just one kid, Mike, who was probably friends with Brian beforehand, and like he knew other people, but I don't think Brian really had like a best friend before Rick came along, and he seems to really find himself like Rick does once they get to know each other. And another thing that's very telling about Brian and like some of his experience, he lives with his grandmother and grandfather instead of his mom, even though we see his mom and she doesn't really seem like a mess. So it's not like you live like, oh, my mom and my parents, like they have a tough situation or whatever, so I live with my grandparents. No, like mom's, she's not, I'm not going to pretend like she's this like well-off person who just doesn't want to be around her kid. Like, she seems like a middle-class mom, but why is she not around that much? We see her here and there, but he's living with his grandfather. And she's elsewhere. Then we get the gens. So we have Gen 1, Gen 2, and then Gen with two N's. These are skater girls from the story who the guys hang around quite a bit. And we see them more and more throughout the course of the series as they all become friends. And there's one of the gens, I think it's Gen 2. There's this local legend about her. And it's like, it makes her sound like badass, but it's also like, if this was true, there's no way you wouldn't be in juvie or something like that. There's no way. I mean, I know it's the 80s, so it's a different time, but like, it's just one of those legends that it's awesome. Totally could get how something like that would circulate, but there's no fucking way this thing is true. But I love that kind of stuff for the coming of age story. That is awesome. I mentioned Mike before. We see him enter the mix, I think around issue 3. He's got like that, that spiked mohawk, green hair. Like he looks like where Brian looks like the kid who like dicks around all the time, and Rick kind of looks like just your average whatever kid. Mike looks like a punk rocker. Like he's the one that people are going to be more judgmental of. He is a stoner. I mean, there's a bit of dabbling with that throughout the course of the story with a bunch of the kids. And then there's also the only other character I would say by name worth noting is Samra, just because that's the girl that Rick develops a crush on throughout the course of the story. And we see her throughout, but I would say Rick, Brian, and then the Jens are probably the most featured characters throughout the story. There are other players that we get involved with as well, but nobody gets fleshed out as much as Rick and Brian do. And from one of what I mentioned before with the slice of life, as I kind of look at the concept of the whole story, what was really interesting was like the first 3 issues. I feel like if you had not picked up issue 1 and you picked up issue 2, you would have been fine. If you picked up issue 3 and not the first 2 issues, you would have been fine. It's each of those issues was kind of more of like a day in the life in getting to know these kids. Obviously, issue 1 is important just because it does establish Brian, and you establish that Rick's new to town and all that kind of stuff. But it has that different vibe where it's just we're bouncing around a little bit. It's a kid, like you're moving, you're skating around town. You're going to have like mini adventure here, mini event here, whatever. Then by the end of issue 3, we do get a bit of a setup towards the end of what's going to come in issue 4, and kind of transpires all the way through the final issue, issue 7. But again, like you could kind of enjoy issues 4 through 7 somewhat in a vacuum. There, like that is the connected story where we start dealing with some other people that are living in Sacramento. Moving a little bit deeper into some of the writing that we get here, in terms of the subject matter, it's all very familiar stuff, like coming of age story. You're going to be dealing with people who are of different views of you. If you're going to be dealing with people that you have like characters have crushes on, friendship strife in some capacity, surviving shitty adults, and that is all in this. I mean, these kids go through a lot with their parental figures in their life. Like Brian's grandfather has his own shit that's going on with him. And then not only is Rick's dad like moving him around the country, but he's like, he's an awful dad. He's terrible. Like he's like, if my word is law in this house, nobody there's no equal to me in this house. And he is married. Like, so all this kind of stuff. And like his mom, as much she's in a shitty situation, like Rick feels very much alone in all of this. So it's just, that's tough. You feel that. Then Brian's got his own bizarre situation going on. Meanwhile, these kids are just trying to have fun. They're trying to do whatever they can to just find the next fun thing, whether that's, getting high, going to the arcade, talking to girls, figuring out how the fuck you're going to survive all that, skateboarding, whatever. And honestly, everything's like skateboarding is at the center of a lot of this. I think music's in all of this too, but skateboarding is more, I mean, it really is like a vehicle for these guys in the course of it. And like, that's what bonded us. And then we're going through all these other things together. Then we get jocks, which it's so interesting, like how jocks, I feel like, have changed in a lot of ways over time. I'm not saying like, they're better than anybody else now, but like you look at like the 80s, I feel like maybe the 70s in some capacity, but just there was a time where it was like, no, they're not, they're jerks and they're not smart, but they have power, that kind of stuff. Like whereas when I was coming up, it was like, yeah, there are definitely some sports that cater to people who aren't as smart, more so than others. And I'm not saying baseball necessarily, doesn't have its own friggin' idiots that are talented, but I also felt like when it for me in the college process, like definitely baseball versus like a football, like you need to like do better in school than in baseball. Football, you can get away with a lot more. Basketball, you could sometimes get away with that kind of stuff too. So it's just, it's interesting seeing that, but there's a whole freaking fiasco at a party with these jocks in this story. And it's just like, I wouldn't want to be a jock in this era. Like seeing how some of these guys are, they're friggin' monsters. They are terrible. But yet you're also like treated like gods because, they play the sports that adults have have approved of in this story.
I once
So
scored 4 touchdowns in one game.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Was it Al Bundy? Yes. Jeez,
there we go.
I couldn't remember. That used to be was it on TBS reruns when I was growing up? I think that Married with Children was on there. It threw me when I saw that at first. I was like, what the hell is this shit? It was so bizarre. But I've talked about the character of Rick and how he's been fleshed out, but Brian to me was my favorite character in the story. Like the audience character, I understand the purpose that character serves, and again, that's not to simplify Rick too much, but the smart best friend is always an interesting character, especially with someone like Brian, where it's like this kid's smart, this kid knows some shit. He's also emotionally smart, and he's just like he's not challenged. That hasn't no one has fostered that intelligence for him properly. He's just seen more as a nuisance because he knows how to get around all these different things and figure out how to to an extent, he gets caught in shit like that and makes some dumb decisions. I mean, in the first issue, you see him make a pretty freaking catastrophically dumb decision for himself. But he's clearly very smart and much smarter than most of his peers, despite being kind of a goofball and everything like that. But I really loved that character. And above all else, I want to see more of this story because of Brian. Moving over to the art, you talked about, and I have not looked at what the Woods art style is, but you talked about how there is an element of cartooniness to it, but that can, as we've said, that can run such a wide range when we say that. That's the same thing with grittiness. Those are the two kind of overarching characteristics that you and I throw at art a ton. I mean, when I think of cartoony, one of the titles we talk about, or one of the artists we talk about, is Trish Forster in her style. Whereas Tony Fleece also has been known to do some cartoony stuff, but their art is not the same. And then you look at Dave Wachter, speaking of Tony Fleece, he's done a lot of cartoony stuff, more so traditionally over on Uncanny Valley. But again, very different vibe from what Trish Forster does. But again, I would still say that what we get in Grommets is also cartoony. That's how I would describe it. Brett Parsons' art style as well. And I love how it fits in all of this, because part of, as much as this is set in the 80s, part of what I like about this story is it reminds me in a way of an Ed, Edd and Eddy from Cartoon Network, where it's got these kids just in an area and they're doing a lot of dumb shit, trying to figure out how to pass the time. And again, there's connected larger stories and stuff like that. But because that's done in because it's a cartoon, there's so much stupid stuff, stupid action that you're able to do in the story and kind of get away with. And I'm not, and this doesn't ever go quite as far as Ed, Edd and Eddy does, where they have the jawbreakers that are massive on the side of their mouth. But you see some some skateboard wipeouts, and it's there's a cartoony-ish vibe to those that you don't necessarily see.
The cover that's behind you, right?
Yeah.
Is that the art style? It's in the book?
Yes, that is.
Very Jorge Corona-esque.
Oh.
The artist on Middle West, right? That's at least
that's a
similar
good call.
vibe that I get.
That's a really good call. That is a really good call. And obviously Corona and Scotty Young are two of the great cartoony artists, if not the absolute best in the business. But it plays in, like I said, it plays in so well to this, and then the colors as well, very bright. And that helps with more so the nostalgic vibe of this series. And again, I've said it before, I'm not an 80s kid, but there's something about that era and the stories that we see in that era that are very clearly set there that just feeds into the feeling of nostalgia. And this is one of those series that absolutely does it. So Grommets, you don't have to wait any longer, Joe. 7 issues. I know you have all the single issues, but for everybody else, June 4th, it's going to be out. So right at the end of this month, go to your local comic shop, pick up that trade. This is one that I'm going to want to have in my collection afterwards, because I know I'm going to go back and read this story at some point again.
Love that. Yeah, this is a book I just dropped the ball on.
Yeah, hey, you know what? Lord knows I've done that many a time. But anyways, enough of that. That is going to do it for this week's mainline episode, issue 111 of TLDR, although we've done way more than 111 recordings. We have, I think right now, as it stands, Joe, you and I have another mainline episode slated. At least for looks like we got a couple, but again, you never fucking know. Things pop up. But either way, until next week, Joe.
Keep reading, baby. Ha ha.